Hello, everybody. Welcome to the conversation. I'm so excited about our guest today because he is fun and funny, and we're going to have a very serious conversation, but I know that we're going to have some fun as well. Ken Wertz is joining us today, and he's the executive director of an organization that I highly respect. It's the National School Plant Management Association. These are the folks who keep our school districts running, keep our facilities going for our students and teachers. And he is the executive director of a nation's worth of these fine folks. And we're going to be talking about what they need in order to help ensure that the indoor air quality in schools is what it should be, that it's healthy. And we're going to make sure that anybody who is working in a leadership position in the schools of America know how to support the facilities managers and their school plant managers. But first, I want to welcome Ken to the show.
Thanks,
Welcome
Jill.
to
Love being here. You kind of set the bar pretty high for my intro there. I hope I can hold up to it. Jeez Louise. Okay.
I have complete faith in you, Ken. I have complete faith. Um, I would love for you to share your background in facilities management with our audience because it's impressive and expansive.
So it all depends on how far you want me to go back, because sometimes when I'm doing a keynote, I show a full timeline of what is Ken, at age 8, starting to work on a farm, a local farm for 20 bucks a week, all the way up to where I am now. But I'll compress that a little bit. Ken Wertz, executive director at NSPMA. I started my journey like many facilities directors and maintenance directors. I'm a recovering facilities director. I worked for the Sharon Public Schools for 18 years as their facilities director, which is a district about 30, 40 minutes south of Boston here in Massachusetts. 5 buildings, between 500 to 700,000 square feet, depending on construction, about 3,500 kids, very manageable. But I started that journey as a licensed plumber. So I'm a licensed plumber by trade. And somehow I ended up being an executive director for a nonprofit. So you tell me, Jill. I don't understand how that happened, but it's something that I've become very passionate about, and I have found that my years in the trenches has really provided me a good insight as to what folks are up against. The boots on the ground people, the facilities directors, the custodians, the maintenance technicians, the designers, the engineers, the architects, the taxpayers, the parents. I'm a proud parent of 2 kids who grew up in the public school system, so I get it. And it's trying to take that passion and help as many folks across the country as we can, because everyone's on a different part of that journey. And what we try to do as an association, I hate the term best practice. I really do. There's a lot of things that get in me, and I get upset with. That's one of them. Public schools can barely afford good enough practice, but as an industry, we try to force feed everyone. Oh, you need to achieve best practice. Well, I think that's flawed. You're setting people up to fail because what you hear people say is, "Well, we don't have the money, so why even bother?" So versus having that story or that other foolish phrase of let's do more with less. It's like, no, you can't. You're going to do less with less. And that's okay. As a community, that's what you've decided you have for funds. So let's set you up to do your absolute best with what you have. And that's kind of our mission and our vision as we continue to grow as an association, is making sure we're meeting people where they're at and we're supporting them with what they need. From all your work for over the years in indoor air quality, what's important for one district might not be important to the next. So it's trying to figure out that gap of, all right, this is not their big thing, but their big thing is this. So how do we get them the best and the most current information and the best supports so they can achieve what's important for them as a community? Our job is not to tell people what they need to be. Our job is to try and help them be the best version of themselves.
I love that. I think that's so sage. And when you say you get it, I want to underscore that for our viewers because you really do. Every meeting that I'm in with you, you have a perspective that is so important. And I think that it represents your association so well because there are a lot of people working on indoor air quality who really don't know what it's like in the day-to-day life of your members. I want
Right.
to shift gears for just a second because EPA has been working on indoor air quality in schools for close to 30 years. And they will tell you, and other agencies will tell you, that fewer than half of all of the K through 12 school districts in the US actually have an indoor air quality plan or management plan. And I'd like to get your perspective on what is keeping districts from doing this work. Is there a lack of knowledge or is there something else?
I think it's a great question. I think it's a balance. As I'm traveling the country more now, I'm seeing more and more small school districts than I am average size. If you go to Indiana, there's like over 300 districts that have less than 100 kids. So I don't think that there's enough layers of staffing and administration to have someone hyper focused on that. You could have a school principal who's also the superintendent, who's also HR, and your facilities director is the head custodian that also drives the bus to get kids to school. So you've got that mix in that 50% that don't have. They're doing the best they can with what they have, but I just don't know if that's high on their radar screen as to what's important. Then you have other districts where, I mean, they're just trying to keep their head above water. A great example. So I was at Healthy Schools, Healthy Kids last week in DC. Well-intentioned people, really great discussion, and it came up the new legislation that passed in New York City of any classroom that's 88 degrees can't be occupied. So I immediately call one of my friends who's in New York. He's like, we move kids around. It's really great. It's really important. But you have to remember, I have an elementary school that has no mechanical ventilation. We open the windows and we're a fairly suburban community. So the classroom at 88 degrees is likely better than what the student is going to be dealt with when they are left from our building because there's so much housing insecurity or their apartments on the 12th floor with no air conditioning and their parents are working 3 jobs to make ends meet and now they've got to leave work to come home because the classroom's 88. I get it. No classroom should be hot. I get it. But it's this kind of weird thing that we're in a spot that we all know what's best, but it's really hard for us to apply that. So I think that's where that question comes in is that why doesn't everyone have an IAQ plan policy? Why hasn't everyone adopted Tools for Schools? I'm a Tools for Schools alumni. I was on our committee. We had a full committee. We'd go walk the buildings together. We cross-train students how to do it. I'm a huge proponent of tools. I think it's great. But I think there's everyone is dealing with different things right now, and they probably just don't have that as their top item because they just had to lay off 15% of their staff because of budget cuts.
Yeah, there's not a school district in America that we're working with that isn't in some state of budget cuts. I mean, and that goes for every type of community, urban, rural, suburban. And oftentimes when school districts, as you know, try to make budget cuts or have to make budget cuts, they try to keep them as far away from the classroom as possible in terms of instruction. So some of the first people to go will be some facility staff, health
Yep.
staff, and that. So,
That's part of the story that we have is I talk about that a lot, and we may, the how I talk. We're gonna go off course here. We're gonna go uncharted territories. But that's typically where you see some of that disconnect is that they don't have a facilities person at the table when they're talking about budget cuts. There's
yeah.
no voice. So yes, aides in classrooms are critical. Teachers are critical. But you can't expect the building to be clean and healthy if you lay off your HVAC technician or your cleaning staff. I had one local district, the teacher union was, no, we support our custodians until it came to them to negotiate a contract. And as part of their contract negotiations, we needed to cut the budget on another part of the house. So it's like, okay, so you got your new teacher's contract. You deserve it. That's the hardest job on the planet. But don't complain in November when you don't have heat because we had to lay off the HVAC technician. You can't operate in a silo. And unfortunately, many districts don't have that voice at that table when they're talking about these critical items and the ramifications of making these siloed decisions.
Absolutely. I want you to help us understand the human impact to facilities managers, plant managers, when it comes to managing indoor air quality. If the whole community decides this is going to be our thing, what does that mean for, the challenges that a plant manager or facility manager may face?
So there's both challenges and opportunities with everything, right? So I think the opportunity is if the town says this is our thing, indoor air quality is a cornerstone of our educational academic system. Well, now that provides the facilities director with the ability to present opportunities like, hey, we really need this type of filter system. We really need another HVAC tech. We really need to do this. And here's why, and here's how much it costs. Well, now you have support from the administration, you have support from the community, you have support from the teachers. So now everyone's behind it. Outside of that, if you don't have that, it becomes trickier to educate people like, oh, by the way, we have this brand new sophisticated building, and everyone's like, oh, good, it'll be cheaper to run. All of my colleagues, and we have this conversation, and it's unfortunate, and I've presented about it, of how no one should have to say, I hate my new building, yet we do, because it's extremely sophisticated. Sometimes they're smarter than the people that design them. I've had those meetings, and it's trying to keep in lockstep with technology but not having professional development funds to either train your staff on how to properly operate and maintain the equipment, or to contract out that service and that support because it's very expensive. It's not that it's having those discussions. Those are the hurdles I'm seeing now. Is like, okay, so we have a new building or we have an old building. We don't have staff that are trained adequately, nor have the capacity to learn that skill. So we need to outsource it, but that needs to be in our operations budget. That anytime I call a technician out here in beautiful Massachusetts, um, some technicians, it's between $275 to $300 an hour for them to show up, and it's a $75 van charge anytime they show up to your curb. So it's like, okay, oh, I forgot a part. I got to go back. All right, so it's those things that you're mapping out, and now from a national standpoint, if you're a community in rural Oklahoma and it takes a technician 2.5 hours to get out to your school, where does that put you?
Yeah.
So there's no one answer to some of the hurdles that the facilities director sees. I will say it's a huge benefit if the town says this is important to us, because then you can come to them with data. Then you can share with them and showcase them the importance of it. Then people are more likely to listen to some of the reports that are out there about indoor air quality as it links to cognitive function.
Hmm.
I that was always a former superintendent's like, oh, you're on that soapbox again. I'm like, well, yeah, you should be too. I said there's I
Absolutely.
said
That's
there's
right.
empirical data showing that not only your students will do better, your teachers will perform better. And last time I
Yes.
checked, that's our core mission is to educate students the best we can. Isn't it better to have
Absolutely.
isn't it better to have a healthy, happy teacher in front of
Yeah.
kids versus a substitute teacher because your teacher's out sick? Like
Absolutely.
you
Well
can't
said.
right?
Yeah.
You can't convince me that the rigor in the classroom is going to be the same with a substitute teacher.
Yeah, that's so
So
true, Ken, and I'm glad you brought that up because I think
yeah.
those are some of the important things that we really need to nail down. We've got to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, there's much more with Ken Wertz, so don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Welcome back. We're talking today with Ken Wertz, the Executive Director of the National School Plants Managers Association. And we're talking about essentially what facilities managers and plant managers need in order to provide healthy indoor air quality. It's a big trend right now. We're going to talk about why. But it's something that anybody in a school district or parents in a school district need to understand what your facilities managers need in order to make this happen, if this is a priority for your community. And Ken, I want to talk to you about green cleaning as a component of good indoor air quality. Talk to us about your thoughts on green cleaning and again, what facilities managers need when it comes to trying to implement a program.
So, full disclosure, over a 30 plus year career, I finally decided that when I come back as a different person, I am going to be a janitor or a custodian. I think it's one of the hardest jobs on the planet, but it's the most rewarding because everything you do impacts a child's life, impacts a teacher's life, and there are so many quick wins that and I go to go to DC, I go to all these things, I sit in all these committees, and everyone's talking about, oh, filters, oh, HVAC, all this. I'm like, whoa, there's an easy base first. So the Jansan world is amazing, and it doesn't cost anything else. Or maybe it costs a little, right? So, okay, we need to reduce the dust in the space. Okay, do you have adequate track matting? Are you catching that debris off a kid's shoes the first 25 feet they walk into a building and every door? Well, no. I'm like, buy some track matting and you'll be surprised how much dust drops in your building. You're going to capture 80% of that heavy material. That's cleaning. And it's not, oh, it's Green Seal certified, it's DFE certified, it's all that stuff. It's just basic fundamentals of a green cleaning process. And that's that big piece. I served on the Massachusetts um, buying team for green cleaning products for years here in Massachusetts in the Commonwealth of Mass. It was one of my favorite activities as a volunteer to help figure out how can we get better products into the space. So the years of methyl ethyl death cleaning really well, it did a great job. It's great with graffiti, but at what cost? So those are the pieces I think that people really need to not forget. We get so attached to the new sparkly thing in the room. Oh, HEPA filters. Oh, we're going to go with MERV 19. Oh, we're going to do this, 5 air changes per hour. But we forget all the stuff on the back end. And I think that is probably the most important step that we step over because we're just numb to it. We don't see it anymore. No one sees the
Yeah.
Clorox, and no disrespect to the Clorox company. They're a great company. But those Clorox wipe tubs that every teacher asks for in their back to school list, it requires gloves, it requires a respirator, it requires an apron. You need personal protective equipment in order to use those. And the
I
dwell
have
time,
great news.
right?
I have I
Yeah,
have
and
great news. They just came out with Clorox wipes that are EPA Safer Choice certified.
yeah.
Yeah, this is new. And so they don't require that, but you're right, like the
So
traditional
so they don't
piece.
require that. So I'll have to read it because
Yes.
I bet what happens is if it's not a citric acid base or an accelerated peroxide base or something like that, sometimes when we're sanitizing and disinfecting, we're missing the step of clear rinsing.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, oh, kids are going to eat snack at their desk. We better disinfect it. I'm like, no, you're causing neurological damage to those kids because now their snacks
Right.
are covered in disinfectant. That's not what you can
Right.
do. So those are
Nope.
I think it really needs to be a process that needs to be discussed and needs to be
Yeah.
understood by the entire community. And
I do too.
no fault to the teachers because they're not getting the resources they need. So they
Yeah.
need to reach out. They're buying more stuff than they're making in their salary. But it's the little one-off dollar stores and that kind of stuff where you go in and buy a best intentioned neutral cleaner, but now it co-mixes with the cleaners they're using in the building, and you're creating potential, hazardous situations. I think green cleaning has come a long way over the past 20, 25 years. The
Yeah.
problem is the first gen of green cleaning didn't really do a good job. It was new.
That's right. That's
And,
right. And without the certifications, you have something, oh, it's based with hydrogen peroxide and so it's green, but that
yeah,
doesn't mean that it's effective. And that's where, we really encourage schools to look at EPA Safer Choice certified
yep, yep,
cleaners because they're not only safer, they are
yep.
also effective and they have to be
Eh,
certified for that.
yeah, DFE, safer choice, the Green Seal certified, because the first cohort there was like, Earth, Earth, Earth-wise fancy certification.
Right.
It's certified by some dude in his garage in Poughkeepsie, New York. And it's like, what? Who is this? Who is this guy, Charlie? And how did he get a certification? So we've learned through the years that there are legitimate certified people. And if you can't go all in, at least get closer.
Yeah.
I always told people, I said, we're greenish. We're as green as we can be, but sadly, sometimes you need to kill things
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
for
I
public
mean,
health. But you don't need to
infectious
kill it,
diseases.
right? But
Yeah.
you don't need to kill it with bleach. And
Right.
that's where we struggle. And I'm working with the National Council on School Nurses to try and educate nurses that bleach is not the answer. The
Yeah.
1-to-9 ratio mix of bleach, the efficacy of it drops drastically after like 72 hours. So they'll
Yeah.
come in, they'll make their bottle at the beginning part of the school year. And then by November, December, they're basically spraying things down with stinky water because the chemical has broken down. It's like, no, we've got sanitizers, we have disinfectants, there's things that work better that we can provide you. Please, please, please stop bringing in bleach. And that's
Well, and the
that
thing,
low
yeah,
hanging, yeah, that's that low hanging fruit, that education piece that I think green cleaning has done a disservice to the community that's trying to bolster it, is that we're not good at getting the message out as to why it's so important.
professional development training is so important, and that's for everybody in
Yeah.
in the building space. And I think the thing that I like most about districts that take a comprehensive approach to green cleaning is the old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And
Hmm.
keeping some of these contaminants out of the building, some of these volatile organic compounds out of the indoor air, it means you don't have to clean it out with a HEPA filter.
Right.
If you keep some of these contamination items and toxins out of the atmosphere to begin with, you don't have to use an expensive technology to remove it. I want to move on real quick because you
Yep.
mentioned that you're a tools for schools guy. I'm a
Mm.
tools for schools gal. And one of the things that Tools for Schools has always been big on is these walkthrough checklists for every nook and cranny of a school district's building. What does it take, though, for a facilities manager to really take advantage of a tool like that?
Well, again, it goes back to support, like a holistic approach, that it's part of the culture, that this is
Mhm.
important to us. Sadly, in these times, we get distracted easily, rightly so, that we may have had a tools for schools walkthrough set up that we can make sure we go and check for things. But now we have to go check for safety and security. How many doors are working? What's the door closures? Are the doors numbered? What's our vulnerable points? Have we looked at, crime prevention through environmental design? So sometimes it gets lost because there's only so much a team can do. So if you have to prioritize, am I going to go walk around and look for a little spot of mold in the corner of a classroom, or am I going to make sure that we're prepared in case, God forbid, the worst happens? It gets prioritized. So that's a big hurdle we're having now, is that, we're doing more reactive maintenance than we ever have. We're not being proactive, we're being very reactive. When something blows up, even to some point, it's like, okay, so we're going to go react. What are you going to do? We're going to go shut it off. Well, you going to fix it? Well, no, we don't have the money to fix it, but the motor's not on fire anymore because we shut the power off to it. Oh, good. So you're not even reacted. So that's what Tools for Schools was really good about, was keeping your eye on the prize, kind of like, oh, we're going to go check our exhaust fans on our roof. We're going to go make sure they're all running. We're going to do our classrooms. We're going to see if someone's sneaking in some nasty things. I was fortunate enough to have an amazing committee. The committee was formed because the prior administration was non-responsive. So once we got a point to, they're like, oh, we had these problem with these fans. I said, no, I closed it out in a work order here. We did that last month. That's already done. Like, so everything that we had complaints about is done. I'm like, well, yeah, but we're going to keep looking. Once the novelty had worn off, and once some of the leaders in that group had retired, it wasn't sustained because it
Yeah.
was no longer a special project that was really a priority for someone. So that's the other thing I find with tools for schools or with any initiative. Depending on the personnel, that it's an important piece for them. As superintendents change over every 3 years, as business managers every 3 years, the job market's jumping. So it's hard to create something that is a non-negotiable for a district where you continue to rotate people in and out.
That's why we require, with our indoor air quality program, we require, first of all, not just the superintendent's involvement, but school board policy so
Absolutely.
that we can institutionalize this regardless of the personnel
Yep.
sitting in leadership positions.
Yep. Yep. No, that's great. It's a great policy. And school boards can be your best ally or the your worst pain in the backside. It's tricky. It's tricky. And they're doing a hard job. They're volunteers. Their phone's not ringing because everything's lovely. So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, in my spare time, I want to go donate 20 hours a week so I can get yelled at when I go grocery shopping. Like, that sounds like fun. Okay, good for you.
It's a hard job. It is a hard job. And we love our school board members. And they have to respond to so many different groups within the community in order to be effective. And we love them. And that's why our partnership with the National School Boards Association is so near and dear to our heart. I
Right.
partnered with them for the first time in 2005. And since that time, we've had a great rapport, and they have been such great partners in this work to improve indoor air quality in schools across the country. We've got to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we have so much more with this awesome conversation with Ken Wertz. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're talking indoor air quality in schools, and we have one of my favorite people to talk to about this, Ken Wertz, who's the executive director of the National School Plant Manager Association. These are the people who are the facilities directors, the plant managers, managing the school buildings for the health and well-being of our students and staff. Ken, we really can't talk about indoor air quality in schools without talking about weather, without talking about climate zones. For a long time, mold and moisture was a big issue for certain climate zones, and school districts in those climate zones had a tough time managing moisture and mold. But there's a lot of other issues going on, and I'd love for you to talk to us about what facilities managers are going through to manage some of those issues.
We only have like an hour, right? Because I could talk for like we could talk 5 or 6 days about this.
I know.
It's interesting that this is not a new issue we've had, and it's something that we've always been chasing my entire career. One of my favorite presenters that I learned from, and I'm not a religious person by any stretch of the imagination, but in the Old Testament in Leviticus, There is an entire passage on mold remediation.
Really?
Yes. So if you go, I think it's Leviticus 13. It's if the house is fouled, the priest comes in, inspects, they remove any of the stones that have been fouled and throw them in a landfill, and then they cut. It goes a little sideways when the priest is blessing it with chicken blood, but for the most part, it's today's mold remediation. So it's like this is nothing new, people. If you eat a grilled cheese sandwich at home, guess what? You have mold in your house. Oh my God, don't say it. Oh, no. So the tricky part starts with a couple of different things, right? So mold needs three things. It needs water, it needs the right temperature, and it needs a food source, right? So as climates are changing, you're seeing more of schools not prepared to deal with one of those things. As buildings evolve, so I do a presentation talking about some of the stuff we're up against, and I show a picture of a one room school that's a brick building where the brick walls are a foot thick and the wood's exposed. You could dump 50 gallons of water on the floor and the building would naturally absorb it and it would evaporate. And it kind of breathes as part of a system. Granted, it smells funky, but it's not mold. But now you have these new buildings that are built like submarines, right? Super, super tight to meet energy. You drop a cup of water, and if you don't deal with that humidity, you're going to instantly have a mold issue. So it keeps evolving and changing, which makes it trickier for facilities directors, especially that have a broad spectrum of portfolio of their buildings. If you're in Boston, you could have an elementary school that was built in the 1900s and one that's LEED Zero, well certified, just opened the doors in 2026, and you need to treat each differently and separately. There's Tools for Schools does a good job. I think quick and immediate response and having a plan, much like you talked earlier about having, why does not the schools have an indoor air quality plan? They should certainly have a mold response plan that everyone knows. All right, we have a disaster recovery company on contract. If we have something break, they come in, they cut open the walls within 72 hours. But it's also a training thing. So here in the Northeast and in the North, historically, summers are when we clean everything. Clean it all. So what will happen is we'll go in and clean the carpets in our library and the offices. Got to clean them. But our buildings don't have air conditioning. And we're cleaning it when it's 100% humidity outside. And then we close the doors and we come back to it in September and we're shocked that we're growing mushrooms. So it's changing the thought process, changing the cycle. It's less of a problem in the South because they have dehumidification. So it's scheduling things differently to be better prepared for responding to mold issues. COVID was horrible for a lot of us, that they would close a building and just walk away from it and then come back and like, oh my God, we have mold. I'm like, oh, well, of course you do. You shut the building down. Yes. If you don't maintain a stable indoor environment, you're going to have problems. And just a voice of concern for folks who have these new buildings who are shocked by the cost of electricity. New buildings are designed to run 24/7, 365. You can't shut them down because when you shut them down, you're starting to have this kind of roller coaster of humidity in your building. You're going to destroy the finishes on your furniture. Things are going to start delaminating, and you're going to create a situation where mold now has a chance to grow. So it's knowing what the problem is. It's knowing your buildings. It's knowing how to respond. It's finding the right products to make sure that when you are going to do mold remediation. I had one horrible story. I was helping out a local Department of Ed, and there was a school where it's like, yeah, we've got this huge mold bloom. Okay, walk me through what you did. All right, so we had it in the 100 wings on Monday. But Jimmy came in and he wiped it all down with the blue stuff. I'm like, all right, so what's the blue stuff? I don't know, it's blue stuff. Okay. But then on Tuesday, all the wing was covered. Then on Wednesday, it went to the next wing. I'm like, okay, I think Jimmy was trying to do the right thing wrong. And he cross-contaminated everything with a dirty rag of neutral cleaner that just carried the mold spores everywhere. Wasn't his fault. He didn't receive proper training. The district had had a budget cut, so they had to lay off some of the maintenance technicians who may have had that training. So it was like a whole just built up, crescendo of oops, oops, oops. So
Hmm.
it could have been short cycle. That first day they had it, they should have called in a disaster recovery company because one of the neighboring communities did that, and they
Hmm.
were able to open school on time. So it's training, it's knowing what you have in your buildings, it's educating everyone the problems, what they keep their eyes open for, and just being as proactive as you can and not losing sight when sadly we get distracted by the sparkling thing in the corner.
Absolutely. Well, I want to pivot real quick because
Sure.
I want to hear the human element of this. I always like to talk about like the human beings behind our choices, whether it's recycling or whether it's, indoor air quality, whatever the topic is, there are human beings on the other side of decisions being made. And you really cannot talk about indoor air quality in American schools without talking about HVAC systems and the general state of ventilation infrastructure in US
Yeah.
schools. So I want you to talk to us again about the human beings, the facilities managers, the plant managers, and what they're facing when it comes to trying to maintain and operate these aging HVAC systems in our schools.
Oh, here, let me show you what I have. Here, this is, can you see this?
Yes, I can.
So this is a 1957 custodial owner's manual from Herman Nelson, walking you through step by step of how to properly maintain a univent heater. This is my most prized possession. Well, I have many prized possessions, but it's like filter changes. This is a maybe 9-page document from the 50s that shows step by step how to maintain the equipment properly. Now, that same Univent heater, the 2026 version of it, it's 115 pages talking about the technical components with computer boards and how the air exchanges happen and how it has to flip and which way you can take the motors up. So we continue to layer on complexity, but we don't always provide all the professional development. So that's a big piece that we're struggling with now. I recently did a webinar with the state of Arizona about preventative maintenance, and that was part of the discussion of the culture of supporting that. And if you're going to change filters in a unit, train your team how to change them properly. When they're there, when they're touching that piece of equipment, you shouldn't be just taking the filter out and throwing another one in. You should do a full PM cycle, preventative maintenance cycle on that unit. So that way, when you put the filter in, you're up and going. The bearings are lubricated, you've vacuumed out the space, you've checked the damper actuators. That requires training. And for me, I would rather see a district touch that piece of equipment correctly 3 times a year versus incorrectly 4 times a year. And
Hmm.
that's what you're
Hmm.
seeing is that level of sophistication. That's hard. Um, our workforce is struggling right now with workforce development for sure. There's a lot of folks in our trade and in our craft that are aging out. In metropolitan areas, we can't compete with the pricing for construction. So, like in the greater Metro Boston area, schools are paying an HVAC tech, say, $40 an hour. They can go into Boston and work on a project and make 120. So
Yeah.
granted, it comes with moving around, being a tradesperson, growing through that. It's nice going to the same space every day, 8 to 3:30, and doing your work versus having to drive an hour and a half or 2 hours as you bounce around from project to project. That being said, you're talking 3 times the pay. So that's a tricky part as well. The sophistication of our new equipment. You really need 2 people. You need the HVAC mechanic who turns the wrenches, but you also need an HVAC controls technician who plugs in the laptop. And sometimes that person's the same, hopefully, but not always. So
Hmm.
it's kind of this balancing act of how can we do our best while we're running behind on our preventative maintenance. Our deferred maintenance, I mean, you saw the 21st Century Schools report.
Oh, yeah.
We're what, $95 billion in deferred maintenance across the
Yeah.
country. So we're working with an aging infrastructure. We're working with new technology, which is great. Um, it's simple things from our end that people don't realize. So we have these brand new sophisticated buildings that have all these filters up on the roof. You have these direct air units, these DOAS units. You have all these rooftop units that you need to change the filters on 3 or 4 times a year.
Hmm.
How do you get 200 2-inch thick giant filters up on a roof if there's no elevator? So now you have a plus 55, I'm in that category, HVAC technician lumping up 300 boxes 4 times a year up a ship's ladder. So it's these little things baked in behind the scene that continually create hurdles for us to better maintain our buildings. Having direct access to get all these filters up onto a roof, I think, is a critical item. So how do you do that? How do you get them there? How often do you change them? Filter media is changing continuously. Everyone thinks of technology as your smartphone and that everything changes. So the filter media now, you can get more efficient filter media, which helps save energy, which helps you from having to change them more times a year. It's back to professional development. It's back to educating administrators, educating architects, what we're up against, because it's sadly we're the person behind the curtain, pulling all the switches that most people don't get what we do on a daily basis.
And it really speaks to something you said earlier in our conversation is having those folks at the table,
Yep.
and being able to articulate what you just did in a planning meeting when they're like, hold up, how am I are we gonna buy or rent a crane of some kind to get those filters up there 3 times a year? And what's the cost of that? Those are the kinds of things that should not be invisible. Facilities
Yeah.
managers should not be invisible.
For my
And
OSHA friends, I think you all know what we do. We send one person to the side of the building with a rope, another person on the ground, and we hoist them up.
oh my word, oh my word. On that, we've got to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we have so much more with Ken, so don't go away. There's more right after this. Welcome back to our conversation with Ken Wertz, the Executive Director of the National School Plant Management Association. Sorry about
There you
that.
go. Nailed it.
And Ken, again, I want everybody who is watching to think about our facilities managers and their needs as we're talking about this conversation about indoor air quality improvements in school districts. And so many of our audience members are school board members, they're superintendents, they're school business officers. How can people in those positions best support their facilities managers around issues of indoor air quality improvements?
I can share with you kind of how I came up through the ranks. It's not the typical version of what you see happen. Usually there's a driving force behind it. If the person that's appointed to the facilities director position is kind of pushy and forces their way in. I was lucky enough that they took a chance on me. I was 26 or 27 years old when they hired me as a facilities director. I don't know what the hell they were thinking, but I was a ball of fire and wanted to learn so much. So they're like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome." But my superintendents made sure I was part of our administrative team. So I'm a huge proponent for learning about what the customer is going through and what the customer needs. So if I can learn about pedagogy, curriculum instruction, 21st century learning models, teach to the child, not to the class, all that kind of stuff, that makes me a better facilities director because now I better understand my customers. But that also keeps me in contact with all the school administration. So when we come to those hard conversations, we come to those hard budget discussions, I'm really part of the team. I'm not an add-on for 10 minutes of an admin meeting. Oh, we're going to have you on the first 10 minutes, Ken, then you can go back to work. Like, well, no, this is my work. If I'm part of this team, I'm part of this team. I can be here for 2 hours every week and I can listen to what you're up against because that's important because it correlates to my team. At least that's how I was brought up through the position. Um, I do think that a lot of times the voice of the facilities side gets undervalued, whether it's because they don't have a bachelor's degree or, wherever they fall. They might be a working person on the job. It might be, Sarah is the head custodian, but also in charge of facilities. That's okay. You treat Sarah as an administrator because she is managing your building. She's managing the most important piece of your day. So supporting them, recognizing them, and it's not recognizing them via, oh, once a year we have a pizza party and thank them. That's great. Do the pizza party, but you need to get them involved every day. You need to do check-ins. You need to do whether it's a cup of coffee for 5 minutes once a week just to see what's going on as an administrator. If they're one of your direct reports, spend the time to listen to them, to understand. Um, we're quick to say no as administrators because we're used to that. I really want this. No. Listen, if they're coming to you, if they've just come from a conference that you've supported and paid for, and they come back and say, hey, I just saw this new piece of cleaning equipment that's going to revolutionize how we clean the classrooms. It's going to make our buildings cleaner, our kids healthier. I really want to look at this. Don't go, oh, can't afford it. It's not in the budget. At least listen, at least look at it, potentially buy one as a test, as a beta site if you can, or see if there's a less expensive technology that will do a close enough job. So if you're using loop mops and you want to shift to microfiber, that's better. It's picking up more dust. Maybe you can't afford the small little iMop that goes and is a tiny extractor, which I highly recommend to everyone. If you haven't seen them, oh my God, changes how we clean. But it's having that open dialogue of respect and support. And that's a lot of times what I'm not seeing I'm seeing it. I'm not seeing it as much from the superintendents. I'm certainly seeing it more from the business officials because I think there's more of a co-working model there for most of the positions. The school boards support it, lock, stock, and barrel, but we tend not to educate them why it's important.
Right.
And when they
And
get,
yeah,
yeah, when they get the budget cut sent to them, they don't
yeah.
know the backstory and conversations that have happened. They get a presentation from the superintendent that says, oh, by the way, we meet our budget, but sometimes they don't know how.
Yep. And I'll tell you, last year at the National School Boards Association Advocacy Institute, the Go Green Initiative gets a segment there. And we brought in Dr. Joseph Allen, one of the nation's leading experts. He's on all the news channels around indoor air quality and healthy
I was part
buildings.
I was part of the behind the scenes team on their 9 Pillars project. So I worked.
Yep.
Oh,
And
Harvard's in my
we,
backyard. So I've worked with them in the past. Yeah, he's amazing. Yep.
we brought him in and he said something that I want if you remember nothing else from this conversation, it's this. He says the person who runs your building may have more impact on your health than your doctor.
Yes.
Who is that person? Facilities managers in
Yeah.
schools. And
Custodians.
so exactly. And so that's the level of respect that I would like to see facilities managers get in school districts because their job is keeping the whole retinue of folks, staff, students, faculty healthy so that they can all learn to perform their jobs. I want to give you a chance to talk about your organization and tell us why school districts should invest in the cost of sending their plant managers and facilities managers to your gatherings.
So I'm gonna answer that, but I have one quick thing to say on the other thing about supporting.
You
So
bet.
if I get cut short on my NSPMA stuff, that's okay. Um, so part of what I'm seeing with my colleagues is when facilities directors are job hopping, it's not for more money. We could go make more money someplace else. The reason they're leaving is because their funds and their budget don't support them doing a good job. So you can offer them a salary that's way, way more than what you would normally pay. It's not what's going to get them in the door. Knowing they're stepping into a system in a district that supports the culture and backs what they support by properly funding so they can do a good job, that's when you have that employee retention. That's an important piece to let people know. It's not that you're going to pay them a higher salary. Pay them the appropriate salary, but fund their budgets, fund their HVAC technicians, fund them to be able to do the job they want to do. And that's why people are leaving jobs now. Now back to NSPMA. So yeah, so it's fun. We've kind of had this rebirth over the past 3 years, and our vision, our mission is tied into, like we talked earlier, about supporting and meeting people where they're at. Um, what happens, we have an annual conference. It's going to be in Denver in May. Um, and what I love about it, this will be my I guess my second full one that I've had ownership of. I inherited the first one, which had a lot of, things already plugged into the program. What I find at the national conference is everyone that's there had to fight to get there. So state events are great, but everyone that's at the national conference is operating at a higher level, which raises the sophistication of all the conversations. So all the breakout sessions, walking the expo floor. Our expo floor has only national vendors, people who cover East Coast to West Coast, or at least a huge geographic footprint. You're not going to talk to a local regional person. You're going to talk to someone who can support anyone across the country. But even the engagement at the booths is more sophisticated because everyone there is at the top of their game and they want to meet other people that are at the top of their game. We had 27 states in attendance this year. We're hoping to break 30 next year. But it's the right people is what we try to get. We don't just try to flood the floor with bodies. We try to flood the floor with people who are going to elevate the conversation, help each other problem solve, and then bring back that information to their state affiliates and share so we can all learn together. The other piece that's kind of cool that we bake in is not only do we provide professional development for our facility side of the house and our maintenance. That's our primary goal. Our
Hmm.
secondary goal is that we provide professional development for state associations.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But how do state
And
associations run a nonprofit supporting
yeah,
public facilities? So it's
absolutely.
kind of, we hit twofold, and I think we had 8 different associations, 8 or 9 this year, sharing what they're doing, certification programs for
Fantastic.
custodians. So it's all that kind of
Yeah.
fun stuff. Yeah, it's great. It's fun.
Well, Ken, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We've got to do this again because there's so much more I'd like to talk with you about. But I want to thank you and all of the school plant managers and facilities managers of the country for all that you do for our students, for our teachers and staff to keep American schools going. Even though budget cuts are tough right now, I want to thank you all and support you all. We are going to be here same time, same place next week with more great information. So until then, have a wonderful week.